Is owning a gym actually worth it? In this video, we've put together a series of interviews with gym owners in the trenches, just like you, to talk about the ins and outs of a gym owner's salary. Welcome to Naamly University Online. I'm your host, Elias Scar. All right, Billy, I know with your background and having worked with many gym owners, I'm really excited to ask some of these questions here. One of the most important questions that I think uh, gets left out is, what does that financial journey look like? Yeah, I think you bring up a really interesting point where when we talk about startup costs, we talk about equipment. And one of the things that I teach about just sales in general, especially in the fitness space, is that it's never been about the toys or even about the space. You give any
Hmm.
competent coach a 10 by 10 square on the ground with no equipment, they'll help somebody get results. It really
Absolutely.
comes down to what you bring to the table as a coach and the toys, whereas eventually important and maybe important for very specific results or extreme results in certain ways. I think it's significantly less important than we're led to believe than the marketing for that equipment leads us to believe.
I agree. And there's nothing wrong with a nice equipment. There's nothing wrong with a big,
Yeah.
beautiful gym. I just want people to be careful thinking that that's the answer or that that's the path for everybody. I might have had a little bit of an advantage in that I had about a decade experience in martial arts, and martial arts training is known to be pretty minimalistic.
Yeah.
And I did plenty workouts with just body weight or just supplementary equipment. So I
Someone
kind of
else's
took
body.
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
How does a gym owner plan in the future for their salary in terms of salary? Do they reinvest in the business? Do they save? Are there other financial strategies? How do we plan? Like if I know as a gym owner, I want to make 100K by a certain, how do I plan for that?
Hmm. Yeah, so I love to obviously, like I mentioned, I like to plan ahead. I also like the idea of using percentages or ratios for different things.
Hmm.
So for example, if I want to make $100,000, and that's a lofty goal. Let's just actually back the truck up a little bit. And gym owners that think it's going to be an easy thing to make $100,000 take home or net owner benefit. There's many people doing that. I have, lots of clients that are doing that, but that is the exception and not the norm. So I don't want people hearing this and thinking like, "Oh, I'm only making, 30 or 40 grand. I'm doing terribly." Well, yes, you do need to make more. You're more in the norm than the previous
Good
category.
perspective to give everybody.
Yeah, I think it's important because I think a lot of people are doing better than they think they are. If we're honest, most gym owners, I mean, we could do like a pop quiz if you're watching this, take a guess, in your head, how much do you think the average gym owner takes home? And you may or may not be surprised to know that I don't have the average salary of a gym owner, but I will tell you that the average gym owner is close to zero. So most gym owners are actually not making any money, as crazy as that sounds. But I will say that there's the difference between the average and the median. So the ones that like are, maybe more of the type that are listening here, the ones that are maybe a little bit better on the business side,
Mhm.
their median salary is nowhere near 100K. If anything, it's closer to somewhere in the 40s.
Okay, good to know. So, okay,
Mhm.
so with that in mind, if I want to hit specific, do you think it's smart to set a goal as I want to be at a certain salary? Should we be looking at something else when it comes to growth? When it comes to that future planning, how do I what do we aim for? What do you think that the target should be?
Yeah, well, I'll say that I'm a huge believer and fan, and I'm just so passionate about helping gym owners and fitness professionals use their business as a vehicle. So keep in mind that money is a tool. It's not the be all end all. It's not the money itself, but it's what it can do. So using that to support first off yourself, your family, perhaps, and maybe others, and to actually give back at some point, or maybe even leave a legacy. These are things that are very possible, but to do that, yes, we need to be planned. We need to have a strategy. And one of the ways I like to do that is to, as fast as possible, have the gym owner pay themselves what I call a living wage. I actually, not to make it overly complex, but I actually have two levels for that. So one would be like a bare bones budget. You can remember that as BBB. That would be like, what do you need to survive? Okay, I
Mhm.
have to feed my body. I have to pay my rent or my mortgage. I have to get, my car to be operating. I have to have maybe some maybe minimum insurance payments and things like that. Let's get to that number as fast as possible, because if you're not at that number, then you're obviously going backwards, right? You have to have those things to live. Once we get there, I don't want you to stop there. I want you to get to a point where you can, pay yourself a comfortable but still relatively frugal wage. I am definitely not a fan of gym owners paying themselves like a tremendous amount of money so they can live this lavish lifestyle when the money's not really there. And
Mm.
that's not realistic in most cases for gym owners to do that. What is realistic is to make a nice, healthy income to support yourself, support your family, have a little left over, possibly to start building and investing and doing other things that you want with that. And then over time, there's lots of other strategies to increase the amount of money that you have coming in and for bigger goals and things like that. But without getting ahead of myself, I want you to get to that point as soon as possible. And a big piece of this would be to try to avoid or get out of debt as fast as possible, because if you're carrying high interest debt, whether that's quote unquote business debt or personal debt, it's still limiting your ability to grow financially. So we want to get to that point as fast as possible. And then what we want to do is, as the business is making money, we want to find the balance of paying ourselves at home so that our needs can be taken care of, but also keeping the business healthy. And one of the things I mean by that is by building up some reserves. We saw in 2020 what happens when gym owners don't have reserves. And as we know, many of them didn't survive that period because there was a major issue with shutdowns and all types of things going on. And if they didn't have a good amount of cash, then they were in trouble. Or maybe they survived, but they had to take on even more loans, and that put them in a bad place moving forward. So if you could set yourself up with, let's say, 3 months of reserves of expenses in your business, that's going to be a really great strategy. And then I'm not saying that's like the only thing you do with your money, but it's one of the things you do. It's part of your strategy. And in addition to that, you are taking a percentage home as the owner because you're taking all the risk, you're doing a lot of the work, so you deserve money above and beyond your salary. So you
Mm.
get paid your salary for being the owner of the business, especially if you're working in the business like many are. So you're sort of like an employee of the business. But then you are treated sort of like a shareholder. You're taking the risk. It's all on you. So as the business grows, becomes more profitable, you then reward yourself with what we call a profit distribution, and then that can be used for various goals, such as building wealth.
Awesome. Awesome. Really, really good. I love that. So, question number one, I would love to get a quick idea of how would you describe the financial journey of owning a gym from like startup to developing your salary? Like, how long did it take, in opening the gym, how long did it take for you to get to a comfortable salary?
Well, it took me about 3 years to get to a
Okay.
comfortable salary.
Okay.
I I really had to move my location from
Mm.
one city to the next because I was doing all the right things at first, and I just was not getting the traction that I needed.
Mm.
So what I did is I moved to a more affluent area with a better location, and it just snowballed from, and I kept doing the exact same thing I was doing at the other place, and with more visibility and more resources from the people around, I just took off like wildfire.
Mm. So really setting up a good salary, like it comes down to it, like location, right? Even just looking for a good salary, where you choose to put your gym has a huge effect on that, it sounds like.
Absolutely, because one of the things that I started with, everybody's afraid of the overhead.
Mm.
Everybody's concerned with the overhead. So it's natural that you want to go for the lower overhead, which is,
Mm-hmm.
in an industrial area. And I moved into a city that there was a lot of companies around, a lot of people working, and it was easy. It was a no-brainer. All I gotta do is get the people that work next door to me to get them to work out with me during lunch, before or after work, and I got it done. I got it made. In
It sounds
theory,
like I mean, it takes so much work and so much effort and hustle to really get a business up and running. So setting yourself up for success in the right place, yeah, I can see it. I can see how that absolutely makes sense.
yeah, and by doing so, and by doing so, I tried guerrilla marketing. I tried advertising. I tried all of that, but it was just I didn't have the budget because I was just starting. And because of it, I couldn't keep my staff, so I had a high turnover.
Mm.
And what I realized is that I was spinning my wheels. I just had two good people with me. I recruited my friends. My friends came out and helped me, and we just moved into a better location.
Hmm.
And I kid you not, within the first week of this place, I have more walk-ins than my last 3.5 years at my other place.
Wow. Wow. That's really impressive. So
Or
with,
if I have a suggestion to say,
yeah, please.
get a commercial location, even if you pay more. Visibility is everything.
Okay. Awesome. Uh, salary ranges. The next thing I want to ask you about is, based on your experience and your network, what is the typical salary range for gym owners at different stages of their business? As they're getting started up, what does that like monthly salary range look like, or annual salary range growth, maturity in the business? At different phases of the business, can you give us an idea of what a salary draw might look like?
Absolutely. At first, since usually the owner, the gym owner, is also a personal trainer,
Mm.
his actual salary is not gonna be that important because he's running his personal business on the side.
Oh, okay. Okay. I get it.
So so the first thing that you want to do is make sure that you start on the black and that you cover all your expenses through the gym. The gym cover its overhead.
Mm-hmm.
100% overhead, you want to be covered by the gym revenue. So you want to take your personal revenue and that be your salary.
Okay, so you separate the two. So the gym covering expenses, and then you essentially pay yourself as an employee through your personal training business.
Yes.
So I would love to start out with sort of an introduction to financial health. I want to get an idea of what would be your description of the financial journey of opening a gym from startup costs to reaching a stable income. Like, how long did it take for you to draw a comfortable salary? What's a reality of that road look like?
Yeah, so if I was given this recommendation for people, I would say don't take my path. So it really took 5 to 6 years to get to a reasonable salary. Like, you go from a trainer, and this was around that 2009, 2010 time, so a few years back, of making 50, 60,000 as a trainer. You're like, I'm going to open my own place.
Mhm.
And then year one, my partner and I put $20,000 to $30,000 into a fitness facility, and we made about $20,000 to $30,000 that year. So you go from making 60,000 to basically making zero that first year. Now, I think with the right mentor, with the right structure, it definitely can go faster. But I see a lot of people, and I definitely went this route too, of you become a good trainer, and you're like, well, this is easy. I can just open a place, and then the people will come. And it really took us like that 5 to 6 year mark to start making good money. And I think we made it because we worked hard, and we were able to shift our model based off of the needs of our clients. And so,
That's an interesting point. Shifting to selling your clients what they want and selling your clients what they need. I expand on that for me. I love that idea at that point.
well, I think at the beginning we were more open in a place of this is what we want and this is what we like.
Mm, mm.
And we first opened up as a CrossFit facility, and this was when it was like $500 affiliation fee, and there was only the only one in town, and we thought this was going to be unique and cool and stuff like that. But you know, the problem is you're still kind of a lower price point place trying to go large group training. And again, all these models can work, whether you're a large group, you're small group,
Yeah.
you're one-on-one, all of them can work. It just we were getting clientele. What we shifted over towards is more that high-end one-on-one, and that took off for us. There really wasn't much competition in our town, and we live in a town of 100,000 people in Columbia, Missouri, so it's not a massive place. But we really found our niche in that high-end one-on-one, and we really thrived in that market. So kind of going through and figuring out what our clientele needed, figuring out the price point that we could charge, figuring out the margins that we needed to run a successful business. Took a few years to figure that out.
What would you do? So if you were going to start fresh, knowing everything you know now, what would you do? What would you have done different?
So I'm a big fan of the apprenticeship model, figuring out someone that's already doing it well, the way that you want to do it. So my partner and I, we worked at a big box gym, and that's hard to model because that's not what we were doing. And then we worked under another model of a smaller gym, but he didn't have a good model. So it was like, well, we're just going to open our own. So we really never saw a model that worked for what we wanted to do. We just saw two examples of what we didn't want to do. And
Mm.
so if you're a young coach and you have I'm a good trainer, that's great. You have to have that part down. I think some people are skipping that part. But on top of that, and then now you need to learn to be a good, manager, salesperson, business owner, marketing person. And so go finding a facility, whether it's, you don't want to go somewhere that you're going to directly compete in the same town of where you're going to open at. But if you can go and just spend some time at the place or go work under that place or pay to be there just to learn kind of how the thing should be, I think that will make that process much faster than, kind of slowly learning it on your own.
Yeah. I mean, it's really a testament to if it does your coach believe in coaching? Like if you're a coach, if you believe so much in coaching, who's
Yeah.
your coach? Who's your business coach? Who's your financial coach? Who's going to help you find the way? I love that. I genuinely, I don't think enough fitness professionals have coaches, have their own coaches.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do see like the mentorship model and, a lot of people selling these big ticket coaching is out there. And like everything, I'm sure there's some great ones out there. And I'm sure there's some bad ones in there. There's a bunch of them in the middle. So, and I do know some really good ones out there. So I'm not trying to knock it, but I think just finding someone that's just doing a successful job at their facility. If you find a successful gym, that's the same model you want to do. Just, even if they don't have an official mentorship program, spending time with them any way that you can would be highly beneficial.
Yeah, smart, real smart. What can you give me an idea? So right now we've talked a little bit about some of the stages of being a gym owner from like going in, I don't want to say going in blind, but going in without guidance, doing it on your own, and that really beginning phase and sort of that phase of understanding systems and structure and putting that into play. And then ultimately after 14 years, understanding it at a level where you can really drive growth. Can you give me an idea of what some of those salary ranges are as you're going through some of these phases? And how do you look at that from a salary growth point of view for the gym owner particularly?
Yeah. I mean, just from personal experience, like that first 5 years was a lower. Then you have a couple of years of getting back to where you are, and then you get into a good point where you're making good money. And I know good money can vary a lot from person to person, but like when you could get to that gym facility of like, okay, I'm making that six figures. I have things running the way that they should be. Now it's kind of playing the game of like, okay, how do I spend less time on the gym floor? And so that's always the balance too, because, we hear this all the time, working on your business versus in your business kind of thing. Um, and so that really comes down to personal preference. Like I know a gym owner, he loves working with people. He absolutely loves it. And so he basically has independent contractor at his facility to cover most of his expenses. And he'll train 10 hours a day, 4 days a week and make really good money because there's no really extra expenses there. And so to me, that's as a gym owner is figuring out what really drives you. Are you trying to make as much money as possible? Because that's one model. I mean, but really like that could be a Planet Fitness model. I mean, because really your goal there is just to get as much money in without anybody showing up. Versus the other side, and I don't knock that. It's just the business model. The other side of like this guy, he's like, I want to work with people, and I don't want to deal with employees. I just want to keep my costs, make as much profit as possible. And I play this game a lot with my coaches too. Is like, what does your ideal week look like? What does your ideal income look like? In the sense of like, what do you want your lifestyle to be like? I really like that, I'm only on the gym floor for a few hours. I make enough to live the life that I want, but I have the time now that I can start adventuring into other businesses. Now I'm partnered up with a PhD behaviorist, and we teach the behavior coaching model for different fitness professionals. I'm a part of another company that does more of this. They're creating a wellness tech for corporations. And I really enjoy that. I love the building of businesses. And so it gives me that avenue to live the life that I want. I'm still working with clients. I get to make the money that I want. And then I get to explore these other business opportunities. And so that's what fills me up. But everyone's going to be different with that, you know, and, going from the single male trainer to married with two kids, like life's changes a little bit there too, of like, I really love to travel, but now when I travel, I'd rather be home with my son. And so things will change, priorities will change.
Yeah.
To answer your question there, if you're taking the risk to leave from being a personal trainer and there more than likely is going to be a few years in there that you're going to have to take a slight step back. It should be a higher end reward at the end of that. Otherwise, what's the point of doing that?
I like one of the common grounds that I have seen, one of the common things I've seen amongst all these interviews is managing expectations, having clear expectations of where to go, and what to do, and what actually happens when you open a business.
The equipment upgrades and all that, especially if you're marketing a higher premium service, I definitely 100% got to invest in that. It has to look the price that you're charging as well. For me personally, everything was rusted out, everything was used, everything was terrible, and then over time you build your base up and you go from there, because we by knowing that, you make it a thing. You make it a thing of like, hey, doesn't matter what this looks like, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. We care about you, not the piece of equipment, because we couldn't compete with the fancy places, right? So
I like that though. I like
yeah.
that it makes what's important is the coaching. What's
Mhm.
important is the training, and that's really where the value in the business is anyway.
sure.
It's smart.
Yeah. And then it's like when you grow from there, like I'm now with 4 locations, we're constantly upgrading stuff just because we can't have it, number one, be defective. And number two, it's got to like maintain the process, like the upscale premium service that we're looking for. So you're constantly reinvesting in that. And I think that's something else that you kind of learn to do with the true cost of just maintaining a facility, let alone, or say a company, let alone just growing a company. So again, like I said, different stages and different effects with that. Because then I think too many people, depending on their goals, they want to grow quickly. You're gonna have to do something a little bit more than just some word of mouth organic, which is our favorite stuff to do, organic referrals. And if you're good, it will happen. Of course, there's lots of strategies to do.
Yeah.
I'm all 100% down for retaining people as much as possible, but we know they're leaving no matter what. And so does your growth goals outpace your retention and your referral marketing, basically? So if it doesn't, then you need to be able to invest in some sort of marketing efforts as well. So going back to my swag comment earlier, would I want to spend $1,000 on just random items, or would I want to put $1,000 into some really targeted or lead source that's going to get me? So I think that you have to start to think about that, pouring your money back into the business. As everybody says, I'm going to pour this back into the business. It's like, what are you pouring it back into? I want to pour it back into, hey, I want to go get, these 3 people, because I know I'm going to close them. And then I know 2 of those people are going to tell somebody else. And then one of them is going to stay for a really long time and probably refer more and more. So it's just the different mindset of reinvesting back in the business, monetarily and non-monetarily.
Yeah, time investment. Yeah, that makes sense. Absolutely makes sense. So when we talk about where you had said, where are we going to reinvest it back into the gym? I would love to hear about do you have any practical advice for how a gym owner should structure their financials? Like how do they find the healthy balance between business growth, operational costs, and salary? How do we structure that to be successful?
Mm-hmm. Great question. And if a gym owner is trying to do this themselves from scratch, I strongly recommend them getting somebody to help guide them, especially like a bookkeeper. And you can learn this on your own, but again, I think we have to also tell our mind where to go. And I don't think sometimes I think we need to learn this skill, but we also need to focus on what matters the most. And I say that early on because I try to do it on my own, and then I found an expert to kind of help me with that. And I was like, holy cow, like this got crazy and complicated really quickly. So thankfully I had some guidance to help me out with that. So I try to always lend that piece of advice to everyone else as well. But what I do notice too, just on a regular profit and loss statement, right, is people not tracking where that specific money is coming from on their resources. They just say income, right? But I like a little more detail. I want to know what services, where did that come from, which program is growing, which program is falling behind. So I want to know our income, and I want to know where it's coming from, right? Salaries, of course, or just wages. That's the biggest expense we're going to have as in our operation. So that's a key piece. And I think there's different metrics out there, anywhere from 30 to 40% salary over revenue. I think that's pretty big. And that's what we have to kind of use as a good number, especially for a more mature business. A little bit younger, earlier business, you can kind of tweak that a little bit more, but I would say to not overpay, especially those early stages. And then of course it's expenses, and that's just simple. Again, so a lot of these fixed expenses like your rent or your just other things that you're going to need that that's coming out no matter what. And then you have your variable expense left over, and that's where we have to be disciplined as owners and telling our money where to go, and is this helpful or not. So I think having that breakout, obviously every month, which I know most gym owners, the good ones do. The ones that are learning need to dial this in a little bit more because they might be a little more uncomfortable with it. But your data dictates decisions. It's always economics over emotion. And you can only do that if you're tracking really well and reviewing this constantly, sometimes on a weekly basis, but definitely on a monthly basis. You have to understand what the numbers are telling you about your business.
Yeah, that's the other the other major common point that all of these other successful gym owners that I've interviewed, every single one of them talks about the importance of having a pulse on your numbers and a detailed pulse. After doing this series of interviews, it's easy to see that every fitness business is a little bit different, but there is definitely some common ground. Know your numbers, have a plan, and pay yourself for that hard work. Don't forget to click the link below for a business gift we put together just for you. And if you like more content like this, don't forget to subscribe, share, and smash that bell for alerts. For Naamly University Online, I'm Elias Scar.